Senator Bob Menendez. He's the Democrat from New Jersey. He's chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So, Senator Menendez, as Richard was finishing up his remarks, I was thinking, you're Vladimir Putin, right? Put yourselves in his shoes. And he's got to be obviously disappointed. He had an American president that was somebody, to be generous, he could get along with, somebody that he thought understood him. And now he's obviously not happy that he's going to have an American president that is going to have a much different strategy in dealing with him. I assume he's going to be very recalcitrant at first, is he not? And is that your assumption?
Well, look, Putin has always looked at when we've had previous quote unquote resets or new engagements as a sign of weakness. Alexei Navalny's number one lieutenant was recently here in Washington, and he told me that when Putin sees talks of resets, he sees weakness. And that's the difference. I think that you're right. That he is going to test President Biden. He's going to see what advantage he can get, if any. But he's got a totally different paradigm going in. He's got a president who has said that, Putin is a killer. He is a president who has got deep experience in foreign policy, both as vice president and in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as his chair, and his travels abroad. He has a president who's clear-eyed about Putin, who Putin is, and he's got a president who just united our allies, both in Europe and at NATO, coming into this meeting. So it is a totally different dynamic. I think President Biden has set this up perfectly for his conversation with Putin.
Senator, it seems as if we're struggling as a foreign policy on our foreign policy as a country in figuring out how to punish Putin where he pays a price. Basically in boxing parlance, give him a bloody nose so he knows what it feels like if we come in and punch harder. Do you think we have tried to bloody his nose and it hasn't worked, or he just ignores these attempts and we've got to go about punishing him a different way?
Chuck, I came from a neighborhood where if the bully constantly picked on you until, you took a piece of wood and whacked him, it wouldn't stop bullying you. And Putin only understands strength. He's KGB. As President Biden has said, he's a ruthless murderer. We want a strategic and a predictable relationship, but, who we're dealing with is very clear. We are dealing with someone who uses chemical weapons to wipe out their political opponents. We have someone who actually, went in by force and grabbed Crimea and is destabilizing Ukraine. We have someone who ultimately has committed war crimes in Syria. So yes, we've attempted to bloody his nose, but in my mind, to use your metaphor, I think you need to do more than bloody. You need to break it so that he understands that you're really serious. Now, the administration, to their credit, rolled out some very significant sanctions about the SolarWinds attack, but we still have chemical weapons sanctions that are pending under law for what he did to Alexei Navalny. And I think if you really want to hurt him, you ultimately go after his oligarchs, the rich people that he has set up to be his funnels for money, and you freeze their accounts and their ability to travel to the West, and now you really get his attention.
All right. On one hand, I hear this, but, as an observer watching all these sanctions, it hadn't worked. Are we hamstrung by his transactional relationship with various European allies of ours? I'm thinking specifically the Nord Stream pipeline for Germany.
Yeah, look, he has been smart. I mean, the president sided him up pretty well. He is a worthy adversary, worthy in terms of what he's willing to do, not worthy of who he is. But the bottom line is, yes, he has been seeking to, in European elections, to support parties that undermine the democracies in those countries. He has created economic relations, the dependency that many countries in Europe have on Russia for their energy source. Russia is sort of like their gas station. So when it comes to Nord Stream in Germany, when it comes to what we see happening in several other countries in Europe who are part of the European Union and have to act by consensus of all of the countries of the European Union, which is an enormous challenge. He has, systematically worked at it. But we also had an administration for the last 4 years that allowed him to do so with impunity. This is a totally different paradigm. The beginning of this trip that President Biden took to the EU with the G7 and with NATO, I think begins to set the structure to push back and make it very clear that there will be consequences. He started off his administration by delivering some consequences. And we didn't see that before. Look, I mean, it tells you the difference between, Trump, who very recently said he had a good meeting with Putin in 2018. And in fact, he believed Putin against all of our intelligence agencies. Now, if Republicans don't get it now, this used to be the party that actually was the biggest anti-communist, anti-Russia on the Putin party. They've embraced Trump, and he seems to be embracing Putin. So I don't know what they don't get about it.
I'm curious of your reaction to this idea that NATO is now being enlisted in the effort to, I guess, check China. I don't know how you would classify it, but, does that make sense to you? Is this, or am I over-interpreting what this announcement is? What's your understanding of NATO's role in confronting and checking China now as a military alliance?
Well, look, I think President Biden led the ability to have NATO for the first time recognize that China is a geostrategic challenge, not just to the United States, but to Europe. It's a challenge to our collective security. Look at the incredible advancements that they are making on the nuclear front and weaponry. Look at what they're doing in the South China Sea, which all the European Union countries, our NATO allies, have concerns about freedom of passage in the South China Sea for both defense as well as economic purposes. Look at what China's been involved with in terms of cyber issues. So it is appropriate. When NATO was created, of course, it was Russia, the Soviet Union at the time. But now the reality is that those threats have enlarged, and China is our biggest single strategic challenge. It's also a challenge for NATO. It's appropriate for them to take a role in the dimensions of that challenge as it relates to national securities of our countries.
So, I mean, this is just it feels like a large expansion of NATO's portfolio. Do you think all member nations of NATO are going to be on this same page on this, considering many of those member nations would like to do economic deals with China?
Well, NATO also works by consensus, and the consensus was to enlarge its mission to specifically designate China as a part of the NATO portfolio. So that is a good beginning. That the countries, some countries could have said, no, we don't think we should. That's NATO's mission. Right. We shouldn't enlarge it. We should deal with China separately. So we're starting off in a good way. That the unanimity of NATO on designating China sends a hell of a message to China and Xi Jinping. So I think China will, of course, like Russia has, as we just discussed, try to pick at the threads of NATO. But I think that the NATO alliance is far more important to members than pulling the threads that China may try.
Well, I think you are right about that. We will start to see China try to do to NATO what Putin's been trying to do for his entire time in power. Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective with us, sir. So thank you.
Great to be with you.